Welcome to the Teapot Reads. My name's Sam. I'm the Teapot. This is what I'm currently reading, and I'm so happy to see you today. Hello and welcome. Welcome back if you're returning, and welcome if this is your first time here. I'm going to try to get through these books as quickly as possible because this season's wrap up, I have read 34 books, which is definitely a record for me. A large portion of these books I read as audiobooks because I have a very long commute now, and it has been wonderful because I have found so many new favorite books thanks to having these like 3 hours every day of listening to audiobooks. It is magnificent, but we are going to try to get through these as quickly as possible, so no dilly-dallying. Like always, this does not include any of the manga that I read this season, so if you want to check that out, I have a link up here or here, whichever site it's on, as well as linked down below. I posted it last week, so that'll be my most recent video preceding this one. And this season is the end of August, so stuff that I finished after posting last season's wrap up, as well as September, October, and most of November. It is like we have less than a week left of November, so yeah, I might finish Swimming Pool Library, and the audiobook I'm listening to right now is The Stars Undying, so I might finish that as well, although they're both a lot slower, more difficult books to read, so I may not finish them. So my goals, like always, my goal is quality over quantity. It's a little different now because I have so much more time to listen to audiobooks, so quality has definitely decreased for some of these titles, and there are actually a couple that I read that I have already unhauled or put somewhere that I'm really not interested in getting down because it's like, you're just eye candy, I don't need you. So there have been a couple really bad and some quite disappointing reads on this wrap up that I'm going to talk to you about, but for the most part I would say quality overtakes it because this season I have read at least 3 absolute all-time favorite books. So that's pretty fantastic. My goal of 1 book every 10 days, absolutely nailed it, and it's actually a goal I'm going to be getting rid of moving forward. I don't need it with the audiobook reading. I will finish a book every 10 days. I will blow that out of the water every month, every season. So my goal has kind of shifted to read regularly every day. So to kind of chunk off so much that I feel like would be something I can digest and read every day and not stress myself out with, but will still give me like wind down time, not counting audiobook time, although I could technically listen to audiobooks in that wind down time. I'm treating it similar to my challenge of reading 100 pages every day, which if you want to check that video out, I will link that as well. But yeah, basically just finding a set amount of pages per book. It's gonna change per book that I want to read every day. Currently my goal for the Swimming Pool Library is 35 pages a day, and that is basically about a chapter of the book every day. Ideally I'll read more, but I'll feel accomplished and I'll feel really good about myself as a reader if I'm reading that much every day. My biggest goal of the year has been reading diversely and hitting 50% diverse reading by the end of the year, and this season I did that. I hit 59% diverse. That is something that I have been conscious of kind of all year, but I did kind of let myself not be super aware of it during this last season. I was not unaware of it. Like I would be, if I wasn't sure what I wanted to read next, I would kind of be like, who's like an author of color like that I could pick up, you know, but for the most part it wasn't a super conscious thing like I had been doing earlier this year. Partly because with the audiobooks I don't need to be super aware of it because I'm consuming so much content, but partly I think because I'm starting to really diversify my bookshelf. So this is a challenge, a goal that I am going to be getting rid of in the new year because I'm switching it around. I'm going to have a goal specifically for reading Black authors, which I'll talk about when we get to the new year, but I'm also going to have my goal, instead of reading diversely, be buying diversely and diversifying my bookshelf that way by purchasing from queer authors, non-binary authors, trans authors, authors of color. That's, I mean, the goal is to be as diverse in my purchasing habits as I can, so therefore I just naturally read what's on my shelf and will naturally be reading diverse books. So this was a really good stepping stone and like beginning, I think, this year's challenge of reading diversely, but I think next 2 years are really gonna get me, I hope, to the place I want to be as a diverse reader. But yeah, I did this, I met this, and I did really good with this one this month, or this season, so I feel really good about that. A goal I've kind of had all year has been to read outside. It is now pretty much winter, as you can see by my Doctor Who Christmas sweater. And yeah, no, done reading outside. I did a little bit of it this autumn, but it just did not work out, partly because of my hours at work. But yeah, it didn't work out. I'm not bringing it into the new year because I don't know if I need it as a goal. Maybe come springtime, summertime, I'll swap it in again. But right now it is not a goal. I didn't meet it. I'm not disappointed with myself, and I'm not going to be working towards it. Another goal I've had is to make time for reading, and this actually did start happening naturally. I would finish up with everything I needed to do, the house would get quiet, and I would actually have about half an hour to myself to be reading in the evenings, and that's something that I would like to continue and to continue bringing forward into the rest of this year and into the new year. I'm really happy that it was happening naturally, and it's something that I hope to continue to cultivate. So yeah, I'm starting to get to that one, just making time specifically for reading, basically. I also wanted to start reading more BookBox books. I am subscribed to several BookBoxes. I actually did recently cancel one of them, and I would like to make a video talking about why I canceled it, because I have a lot of reasons. And because I'm subscribed to so many, I do get a lot of books, and a lot of books that I want to read and that are beautiful and that are interesting. And I would like to weed out the ones that aren't great. So if there's a sequel, I don't feel compelled to necessarily buy that sequel, like I did with one of the books on this list. Lots and thoughts there. But reading more BookBox books, this is something that I managed to do, and we'll talk about in the stats, but I'm actually really proud of my stats this season. And again, audiobooks coming in clutch. I'm able to read so many books that weren't super high on my TBR because they don't have to be. Reading more BookBox books is something that I'm continuing to try to do, especially because yeah, I found a favorite book that way. And I was like not excited for it, and it came and I was like, whatever, and then I read it and it's like blown my mind. We'll talk about it. And the other goal I really have is to read more classics. I did okay with it this season. I'm going to be really working towards this one in the new year, and I think my goal is going to be at least one classic a month. And right now, as you saw, I'm reading The Swimming Pool Library, which I would say is probably a modern classic, just the way it's marketed and sold these days. So this is a good sign, I think. Stats. I had to write them down because there's no way I was gonna remember this. So like I said, I read 34 books total, which is phenomenal. That is over 10 books a month. That is over 11 books a month, actually. I read 20 of those were diverse, so that comes out to 59%. I read 13 BookBox books, so that is 38%. 6 classics, so 18%. I would really like to get that closer to 25 on the regular, because I really do like classics books and I have so many of them that I want to read. Science fiction is something I've found myself really gravitating towards and drifting to this season, and I read 3, so that comes out to 10%. That is a much higher stat than I normally read, but I find myself really itching for some good sci-fi. So I think you can expect to see that trend going up in the next couple wrap-ups. And then for YA, I read 10 books that were YA books, so that comes to 29% of my reading. And I read 4 graphic novels, so that is 14% of my reading. Don't expect to see the graphic novels stat ticking up. It was kind of a fluke, and the one that wasn't a fluke was really disappointing. So we are going to be going in order of how I read them, and because I have so many, I'm going to breeze through them. If I already have a review or another type of video dedicated to this book up, I am just going to link that above and below and recommend you go check that out if you want my full thoughts. I will just give a really short rundown here. I believe I was reading or had just finished reading City of Brass in my last wrap-up. If I didn't mention that in the wrap-up or hadn't finished it, I did read City of Brass and I really liked it. And then I went into this season with Kingdom of Copper, Empire of Gold, and River of Silver. And yes, this is an ARC. These are all by Shannon Chakraborty. I really loved these. I do have a full review up, so please go check that out if you want full thoughts. But overall, giving this series 4.5 stars, or maybe 4 stars. I don't remember what I said in that, but right in that window. Really good. Strongly recommended. Kind of an underrated fantasy series. Totally worth it. Super excited for her new book coming out in, I want to say March. Yeah, really stoked. Then I listened to an audiobook of Fire and Blood by George R.R. Martin, and I think a couple other people helped him with it. I read this in anticipation of House of the Dragon. I loved it. I thought it was really good. It was surprisingly easy to listen to an audiobook of it and keep track of everything. And yes, I did feel better than everyone else. I'm just kidding. But it was kind of nice to be able to explain things happening in House of the Dragon to the people I was watching it with, my family, because they didn't always understand what was going on. But I do really recommend it, especially if you're a Game of Thrones fan or a House of the Dragon fan, because it dives into some things, and I love how the show is taking some of the beats in Fire and Blood and doing unique things with them and which path they're choosing for each, because there's multiple sort of, not narrators, but sources that Fire and Blood is taking things from, because it's supposed to be like a text within the world of A Song of Ice and Fire. And I really like how the show is kind of choosing what is the like accurate one. So it is kind of working in tandem with the written canon. Then I read Anne of Green Gables by Ella Montgomery. This is a classic. I do have my reading vlog for this posted, so go check out my thoughts there. I have been reading this entire series, and by the next time I do a wrap up, I will have finished them all. So yeah, a lot of Anne content coming down the pipeline. Look forward to that. Then I read We All Fall Down, and I don't even remember the author's name. This one is really controversial when it came out because of how the Black characters are depicted. Outside of that, I really disliked this book. It was a really boring, really strange, and not in a artsy way, in a like, who said you could write a book, because things are not clicking. And also, why was it YA? I don't know. Very strange, not good. What did I give it? I gave it 2.5 stars. That's probably my lowest rating in a while, possibly all year. It was super bad. Really don't recommend this one at all. And I mean, people were calling it racist, and creators of color and readers of color were calling it racist, so I'll take their word for it, because I don't think I can really speak on that. Me personally, well, I kind of saw that. I do think that maybe in book 2, some of these things that were problematic would be wrapped up with like a neat twist, but it's not worth getting to book 2. Book 1 was just so bad in general. And yeah, like if readers of color are saying that it's not okay, probably not okay. What was the plot of this one? It's like some prophecy. There's 4 kids, but they're also not that young. I had a really hard time pegging down their ages, and they're just kind of playing out their roles in this ancient prophecy to restore magic. It wasn't good. It really wasn't good. And it's kind of urban fantasy, kind of not. It was bad. It was bad. Then I read The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake. I have like 1 million copies of this book. I really enjoyed it. It wasn't like a new favorite, but I can see why so many people did like it. If you haven't heard of The Atlas 6, it probably means you're not on TikTok. This is a dark academia fantasy. I did love the dark academia vibes, and I did love how the powers worked. I thought they were really highbrow and interesting, and were a really intricate take on how magic can work. And I really did like all the characters. Parisa is my favorite. She's amazing. I am really looking forward to book 2. It wasn't super engaged the entire time. Like, I wasn't sucked in where I couldn't look away, but I did really enjoy the experience, and I have no regret over all the editions that I have collected. It is a beautiful book. It is a fun read, and I will probably keep collecting editions of this book, because why not? Then I read another book that I already unhauled, Forgery of Roses. Again, don't remember the author's name. It was just fine. There really wasn't anything special here. It was kind of a retelling of Picture of Dorian Gray, I believe. Really the big problem I had was way characters interacted with each other didn't always make sense, and the chemistry between the protagonist and her love interest just did nothing. It really wasn't there. I did like how magic worked. I liked the early parts of the book a lot, but it just kind of fell apart by the end. So unhauled this one already. Here's a book that's 5 stars and has one that's been sitting on my shelves for ages and had been getting close to the chopping block, but it was 5 stars in the end. I really ended up loving it. It's not a favorite of all time book, but it was so good, and I would be looking forward to it every day when I picked it up. And that is Court of Miracles by Kester Grant. This is the first in a trilogy, I believe, but I actually don't know if the next books are going to be written. I feel like when it came out, it wasn't as well received as people wanted it to be, in large part because people didn't like the adaptation of Les Mis. I really enjoyed it. I'm not a huge Les Mis fan, but I thought it was a lot of fun. I really liked the system that was built up. It isn't a fantasy, but it is got a sort of vibe to it. It is a like alternative historical novel YA. It's got like, I guess, it has like fantasy type action and adventure. It's told from the point of view of Eponine, and also is really about Cassette, but these are not the characters you're familiar with. If you're familiar at all with any version of Les Mis, I have seen the live production and I do really want to read the book. I'm not a huge Les Mis fan. I really enjoyed this. I think if you're not wedded to the source material, you'll really enjoy this as well. It's really solid. Then I read All of Us Villains and All Our Demise. These are by Amanda Foody and Charlie Herman. I actually have a review up for both of these, so if you're interested, I would say go check these out. They're definitely worth your time. They were so much fun and fantastic, and the audiobook is really stunning for this one. I loved the voice actors that they got. Hooky Volume 2. This is by Miriam Bonaster-Tur. I loved Hooky Volume 1. I feel like I talked about it a lot last year, so I was super excited and really looking forward to this one. It completely disappointed me. I did not like it. It picks up a little after where Hooky Volume 1 lets off, and there was just some disconnect pretty much immediately from the get-go. A lot of the problem came down to character dialogue, and I don't think it's originally written in English. I could be wrong about that, but there is something that feels very translated where one character will say something and the other character will respond almost correctly. There's just a gap there. I had a really hard time with pretty much every character interaction. A lot of the character moments that I had loved in Volume 1 and a lot of the smaller moments that I had loved in Volume 1 just did not exist in this one. Additionally, anytime anything happened, literally a cast of characters would pile on together and do it, and it just felt overwhelming, and it was like a blur of faces. I would lose track of people, and these side characters felt really unimportant in this one. Not a fan. I will be reading Volume 3 because I think Volume 3 is the last one, and I do believe there is a time jump between this one and the next volume, so I am really excited to see what happens after that time jump, but this was one of the most disappointing reads of the year, which I definitely would not have expected. This isn't going to surprise anyone who's been visiting this channel for a little bit, and that is Nona the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. I loved this book. There were some things that were a little disappointing just because I am so part of the fandom, especially on Reddit. People had guessed things way in advance, but this, I mean, it wasn't disappointing enough for me to dock it. It was 5 stars. Easy. This book is weird. It is a lot. I cried several times. I can't tell you much about Nona because you can't talk about Nona and actually say anything about it unless you've read the first 2 books, and even reading the back of this book gives away something because something happens in book 1 and that doesn't make sense with the back of this book. Anyway, series continues to be amazing. The Locked Tomb trilogy, one of my favorite reads of the year, one of my favorite reads of all time. It's not a trilogy anymore, it's a series, but oof, I have big plans for when Alecto comes out, so just be ready. The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea by Axie O is a book that I've seen a lot of people call very similar to a Ghibli film, and I think in a lot of ways that is 100% accurate. I really liked this book. I think I gave it 4 stars ultimately. It is definitely a younger YA, which I'm totally okay with, but I do think you need to go into it with that mindset, and I'm glad I did, because if I had gone into it expecting really anything more mature, I would have been disappointed. Not that it is an immature book, it just doesn't necessarily go super far with everything that it does. It kind of hits a stopping point that a lot of YA does, which is not a bad thing. It is just writing to a different audience, and that is okay. And sometimes I want to be reading from that audience's point of view. Basically, Mina ends up sacrificing herself and jumping into the sea to become the sea god's bride in a bid, or in an attempt to basically save her village and return him to life. And while she's there in the spirit world, she kind of gets entangled with the mystery of why the sea god is asleep, what even happened, and other politics and dramas happening. I really did love the aesthetics of this. It definitely had that Ghibli vibe. I really enjoyed the ending as well, which there was a point where I was like, oh man, that's how it's gonna end, but then it didn't end the way I was worried, and it did something really great. So I was really pleased. I'm so sad it's just a standalone, because I really would have enjoyed living in this world a little longer, even if it was a companion book or a prequel. There's a very particular character who I would have loved to see her prequel story. So maybe Axie O, you could do that. But yes, I think if Axie O continues to write any fantasy, it will probably be an auto buy for me. Winter's Orbit by Everina Maxwell was a book that was practically written for me, and I put off reading it for so long. Funny story, I actually started reading it like a year ago or earlier this year, I want to say, and just stopped because I was like, it's not gripping me. But I finally sat down and started reading it, and I was like, holy shit, this book is amazing. It is so good. It is fantastic. It is a not forced marriage, because it doesn't, I guess technically that's the trope, but it's in the kindest sense. We have Count Jinan. He is sort of a diplomat type representative for his planet, which is part of the Iskat Empire. And his husband, Tom, ends up dying, and because there is this big political treaty event happening and they need representatives to show that the Iskat Empire is at peace, he marries a different prince who's like, he's really fairly low down in the like royalty like lineage, Prince Kiam, and they're precious. Okay, they're precious. There's a lot to unpack between the two of them because they both come with their unique package. Jinin more than Kiam, but Kiam still has some things going on. And Prince Tom's death, it turns out, is kind of suspicious, and there's an investigation that does kind of put Jinin in the crosshairs, and Kiam is like, absolutely not. So they do some investigating and things are revealed. I like to say that this is a little bit more of a romance first before a sci-fi, although it definitely has sci-fi elements. Absolutely love this. 100%. I think I will reread it at some point because of how much I enjoyed it, and I would like to kind of give it even more time of day. And it's just a really good sci-fi as well. Even though it's a romance first and a relationship story first, the sci-fi elements are pretty solid. And yeah, Everina Maxwell is auto-buy moving forward. Please never stop writing. Then I read 3 volumes of Fence by C.S. Packet with the art by Joanna the Mad. I read these just kind of on a whim. I got ebook copies of it. I don't know if I'll buy the individual volumes, but if there's ever like a big bind up of them, I will pick them up. I also don't feel like urgently like I have to continue on with the series. It was a lot of fun, and I actually scratched the fencing urge because I used to fence competitively and I really liked it, and it was really cathartic to see it on page and just get like kind of into it again. I'm not really a fan of like sports anime or sports manga, which is definitely pulling from those aesthetics and that genre, but I did really enjoy Fence. It was fun. Another incredibly disappointing book. And a book that I have spent money getting matching editions, and I don't even know if I'm gonna finish the series because this one was just so disappointing, and I've heard people say that books 2, well, I don't know about book 3, but book 2 is incredibly even more disappointing. Even people who like book 1 did not like book 2, and that is Kingdom of the Wicked by Kerri Maniscalco. This is the gorgeous FairyLoot edition, but I would not be surprised if next year I end up unhauling these books. I disliked pretty much every element of it. The characters were not super interesting. It didn't do anything that really engaged me. The writing was actually pretty okay. I'm not gonna like bash the writing. She knows how to write. I just didn't like what she was writing, I guess. The plot was very threadbare and made almost no sense. I particularly disliked the fact that our protagonist, whose name I can't even be bothered to remember, Amelia, every time she's like interacting with Wrath, she's like, I don't trust you, like blah blah blah, you're a bad guy. Like, even though he's literally done nothing to make her not trust him or show he's a bad guy, she's just like, this her like gut reaction, which, you know, fair, whatever, he's a demon, but like also he's only been helpful. And then when he does something like slightly untrustworthy, it's like, oh my god, you betrayed me. Like, shut up, Amelia. You've been acting like you don't even like him. There's no chemistry between the two of you. When he's offered to help, you've turned him down, and then suddenly when he does the exact thing you've been waiting for him to do, you're upset about it. Come on, bitch, shut up. Not that Wrath was like a good character. He was very two-dimensional, but like there was so little of him that I couldn't hate him. Then I read, and I think I just wrote these down kind of in the wrong order because I do think I actually finished one of these a lot sooner than I thought I did, but Anne of Avonlea and Anne of the Island, books 2 and 3 of the Anne of Green Gables series. Like I said, I have an Anne of Green Gables reading vlog up, which encapsulates this book as well. So far, this has been my favorite of the series. I absolutely love this. I think it's just been just a delight and fantastic. This is maybe one of my favorite children's classics of all time. And I'm sad I didn't read it as a child, although I don't know if I would have gotten the same things out of it. And then book 3 is Anne of the Island, which I did actually end up really enjoying as well for completely different reasons. It is a very different book from books 1 and 2, but still really, really enjoyable. The reading vlog for this one is going to go up probably in a couple weeks because it takes me a little bit to edit those. But yeah, you can look forward to that as well when you want to hear my full thoughts. I was still kind of on the high of Winter's Orbit and was looking for something similar. So I basically pulled the fantasy equivalent, which was A Strange and Stubborn Endurance by Foz Meadows. This is another sort of arranged marriage. I liked it a lot. There were a lot of words though that were very hard to follow. So we have Velisson and Caethari, and Velisson is from a rather repressive country, and basically his father, who had been trying to broker a diplomatic marriage between Velisson and the daughter of another country, finds Velisson with a man and as a reaction gets very upset and ends up banishing him. But because this other country, which is called Tithena, that was it, Tithena. Tithena is a much more, what's the opposite of repressed? Not free, whatever that word is. They're, you know, being queer is not a problem there at all. And so Velisson is engaged to Caethari, who is a high-ranking, they're both like nobility basically in their respective countries. And so they become engaged, and very similar to Winter's Orbit, they become entwined in a mystery that they're investigating, as someone seems to be intent on destroying their marriage. It was really good. It wasn't like the best thing I've ever read. I think that I just didn't jive with how certain plot points were played out, although the ending was really fantastic, and it did shock me when we found out what was going on. I was like, oh shit. And it did get dark. I will say the author, they have included a set of trigger warnings at the beginning of this book. I recommend actually paying attention to those, because the triggering events happen almost immediately, and a lot of the book is healing from those traumatic events. And I did really like the healing plot line, and I did like the world building a lot, although I'm not someone who's really good with character names, and so the new titles and all the character names were a bit confusing, but not in a way that really detracted. I don't tend to detract points. I don't really tend to think poorly of a book because I can't follow character names. And titles, also not a problem. Like I won't, like if I'm like, I don't understand this title unless it's like extensively bad. Because I actually really like when fantasy will create things like that, and I really liked how there were like gender neutral and non-binary titles available to characters, and there is also a trans character, and yeah, I really liked that sort of just evasive queerness of this book. I just personally was like, I have no idea what these words are, but I loved it. I think I gave this one 4 stars just because it almost got all the way. It's not as good as Winter's Orbit, but if you're looking for a fantasy equivalent, it's definitely this book. Another incredibly disappointing book, although I have a harder time wanting to get rid of this one, even though it's gorgeous, is one of the reasons I don't want to get rid of it. And also I feel like maybe in a couple years it's worth giving a reread, even though I found it incredibly disappointing. It probably will be on hold. Anyway, that's Spells for Forgetting by Adrienne Young. This book really is just one of the most beautiful books I have ever owned. We've got gorgeous art on the inside, and this is what the naked hardcover looks like. The vibes are a little bit Practical Magic. It's pitched as like a sort of mystery. You're trying to figure out what happened and tore these characters apart because someone died. So there was this group of friends, one of them died, the other one left the island, and this magical island of Sorsha is full of witches. There's like no magic in this book. There's like no magic. I don't know why that was an element. The chemistry between Emery and August, which is supposed to be the selling point, does not exist. There was no chemistry between them. I did not like them. I couldn't see what she saw in him or what he saw in her, or why they were so like obsessed with each other. The mystery was not super interesting. The main characters do almost no investigating. Basically, we as the reader only find out because of these other perspectives that are just kind of thrown in there. And it was so frustrating. Nothing happens. Without any chemistry, it's not even romance. It just is aesthetics, and they weren't even strong enough aesthetics to get me through the novel. This was literally just like the most bland thing I've read all year. So boring, so disappointing, because I didn't have high hopes for it either. Like, it wasn't like, oh, this is gonna be like a new favorite, but I had like hopes for it because people love Adrienne Young's writing, and I have some of her other books, and now I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna get to them anytime soon because this was just not good. Maybe her YA is better because this was her adult debut, but geez, that was not a good book. Then we have one of my absolute favorite books of the year and all time, and a book that I just need everyone to read immediately because it is just fantastic. And anyway, that book is Ocean's Echo, also by Everina Maxwell. Yes, I did read her other book this season as well because I could not stop myself, and I actually got an early copy of it because it came out at work a little early. This is my Illumicrate copy, so I want to show it off, but I have the American hardcover as well. Oh my freaking God, I read it in like 2 days. I literally skipped dinner one day because I was just like, I have to read. I have to read. I like laid on bed and read, and oh my God, it's so good. It is set in the same universe, literally, as Winter's Promise. That's a different book. As Winter's Orbit. But it takes place in a very different part of that universe. And we actually see a lot of the political elements that are laid down in that book really come to fruition or are teased at even more strongly in this one. It is a sci-fi first, and there is a relationship in there, which I did really enjoy, but that's not the focus of it necessarily. It is about space psychics and consent, and I think you should just read it. The thing that got me to read it was we have one character who can read minds and one character who can control minds, and the character Tennel, who can read minds, he and his type of space psychic are used for deep space travel because they can kind of see the way through the stars. And Surrit, who is one who can control minds, his set of talents is typically used to control those who can read minds in order to get them to work for the government. And Tennel is conscripted very sketchy way and assigned to Surrit, who is kind of set up to fail. And Surrit is like, I'm not going to force you to do this, let's pretend. And in that pretending of their bond, they stumble into something. It is so good. It just absolutely, it grabbed me from page one and pulled me through, and is like Winter's Orbit. I feel like this book was written specifically for me, but everything that I loved about Winter's Orbit is turned up 10 notches in this one and just is perfect. 5 stars, easy 5 stars. I obsessed with this one, absolutely obsessed with this one. This one's gonna upset some people, and it upset me because I loved book 1 so much. It is one of my favorite books of all time. But this book was severely disappointing, and I had an arc of it and was planning to do a review of it, but I just felt like I was so disappointed and disheartened with the book that sitting down and doing a review of it would make me hate it even more. And I don't want to hate it because it did have some good points. And that book is Bloodmarked by Tracy Deonn. I feel like I've been waiting for a very long time for this book, like a very long time. So the fact that it was so disappointing, just, yeah. At some point I will go into it because I have a lot to say, but today I still feel like I don't have the strength. Short version of why I didn't like it. I really enjoyed the beginning and I really enjoyed the end, but the middle was tedious. And there's an introduction of a character in here who, while he opens up the world, felt like a deus ex machina that then literally does nothing. And I didn't even understand the point of most of the things happening. This felt so much like a bridge book and not something that could stand on its own. Some of Bree's decisions made zero sense in the context of her we know about. Any of the growth that was meant to point towards these decisions just didn't lead me there. Bloodmarked was really, really freaking disappointing. Almost at the end. Let's keep going. Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Sue Lynn Tan. I really enjoyed this one. It also has that sort of Ghibli vibe. I loved the speed at which the plotline goes through, and I like how it's sort of like all these smaller stories and how our protagonist is entwined in the stories and how the stories are entwined with her. I am planning to do a review of this series once I read Heart of the Sun Warrior, which I will be reading soon. So I'm not going to say much more because I really would like to do an actual review for these books. Silver Under Nightfall by Rin Chupeco is the best book I've read this season, maybe the best book I've read this year. It might be knocking Gideon out of that. I haven't been able to stop thinking about this book since I read it. Very Witcher vibes. Vampire hunter and 2 vampires throuple. The world's fantastic. The plot was fantastic. The angst was fantastic. There was nothing wrong with it. It was amazing. I was not intending to even read this book. It came in Goldsboro. It showed up. I was like, okay, I put it on my shelf with other books that seemed to match the aesthetic. No, literally a favorite, literally obsessed with it. We'll probably reread it before the year is over. That's how much I loved it. And after I reread it, I'll do a full review. I just haven't been able to like sit and talk about it because I'm so obsessed with it. And then following up on it, I was like, I want more vampires. So I picked up Dowry of Blood. This is the Fairyloot edition. And this is by S.T. Gibson. I know why a lot of people liked it. And I thought the writing was not beautiful, but I didn't vibe with it the way I wanted to. It was just okay. It wasn't badly written. The characters weren't bad. It was just a very thin story for me, and I really wish I could have lived in it a little more than the book let me live in it. So it was just okay. Definitely a keeper on the shelf, especially this edition because it's so pretty, but I don't think I'll probably ever reread it, or if I do, it'll be quite a while from now. Sorry, I might be changing like the visuals slightly because it's not like recording correctly. If I'm jumping around visually, that's why. I didn't realize it right away. Okay, where did I leave off? It was with Strike the Zither by Joan Hay. I have been really looking forward to this one for a while. I think I put it in one of my most anticipated reads of the year. I did really enjoy it. I didn't think it was the best thing I've ever read. I think that a lot of my problems really came down to the first half of the novel. The second half is a lot stronger, and that sort of bridge period, I do have a couple questions about why certain decisions were made, but it is book one in a duology, so definitely a lot of room to kind of see things wrapped up, and you can just tell how much care and attention to detail went into the creation of this book, and I absolutely love it for what it is doing. I don't think anyone else in the YA market is doing books quite like this with this much intensity and intricate detail that Joan is doing. It definitely makes me want to read the Three Kingdoms book, and so I will actually probably be doing that either next year or the year after. And it was one of those books that as soon as I finished it, even though I wasn't in love with it while I was reading it, as soon as I finished it, and even still like today, it's been like a week and a half, I find myself kind of craving it. It was definitely a very unique experience that I don't think can be replicated. Then we have another slightly disappointing read, only because I kind of had high expectations for it, just the way it was pitched, and that is So This Is Ever After by F.T. Lukens. I do have F.T. Lukens' other, I think they've actually written a couple books, but the other one they're really well known for, which is In Deeper Waters, and I do really want to read In Deeper Waters before I decide whether I'm giving up on this author and unhauling their books, or keeping them and just maybe demoting their location on the bookshelf because I don't necessarily want to look at it all the time. This was pitched as Carry On and the Simon Snow books in general meets Arthurian legend. I did not love it. It felt like it was pulling a lot from D&D and like role-playing aspects, which I am totally okay with when it's done in sort of a fun way, but it felt so arduous and over the top, and just like realistic decisions were thrown out in favor of being like Winky Winky, a barbarian. Like, come on. I also feel like the main chemistry just really wasn't there. As much as I like the conceit of the character trying to get someone to fall in love with him, I didn't see enough between our main pairing to really be super interested. And I also feel like the angst that it was building up to did not go far enough. I'm not someone who typically in a review or critique is trying to tell and like be like, this is how it should have been written. But in this case, I do think that this book would have been a lot better if it had been from Matt's perspective. That's just a thought. I don't even know if that really would have saved it. Then I read The Nutcracker by E.T.A. Hoffmann. This is the original version of The Nutcracker. I think the one a lot of people are more familiar with is the Dumas version. I'm not going to go deep into this because there is a vlog coming out where I'm going to talk about this in depth and give my little review for it. Then I read Belladonna by Adeline Grace. This is my first Adeline Grace book, although her other books, All the Stars and Teeth or something like that, also sound really interesting. I loved the aesthetics in this one, and I loved the family in this one. I thought it was really great, built up cast of characters that kind of harks back to Shadowhunters, which one of the reasons I really loved those books growing up was because the cast of characters and the family, Found Family and Blood Family, just was really, really well done. And I love a sprawling cast that really complements each other, and I think Belladonna does a really good job. My big problem was the like love triangle thing going on. It took a while for me to feel like there's any chemistry between Signa and her suitors, and that really threw me. Once that got going, I was like into it, and I was into the story in general, and the aesthetics were really solid. I liked the world building, and I liked a lot of the kind of moralizing that kind of, or I shouldn't say moralizing, but the small conversations that go on that have to do with death, because she she's like falling in love with death, and I really liked him as a character in general. It being the first in a duology, I disliked how it ended because pretty much everything was wrapped up, and I'm a fan of, if it's a series, roll over some of the plot elements. Like, you don't have to wrap everything up and give like one little tease, and that's how this one ends. While I liked the wrap up, I wish it wasn't a sequel. If you're gonna make a second one to this, I hope it's a companion book. I think it kind of is, because I think it's in part from another character's point of view, but the way it ends makes it feel like Signa is still a very important part. And I kind of just wish she wasn't. Is that so mean of me to say? It just, if you're gonna wrap up everything in book one and then be like a little like last minute tease, that's not super interesting to me. Then I read Breakfast at Tiffany's by Truman Capote. I have read Truman Capote's most famous book, which is In Cold Blood. I read that a while ago and was not super a fan. I did really like this for some reasons, but again, this is going to be in that vlog that Nutcracker is going to be in, and so I'll give my full thoughts there. And finally, the last book I finished is Anne of Windy Poplars. This has been my least favorite Anne of Green Gables book to date. It was a slog to get through. It was so difficult. I did not like it nearly a third or quarter as much as I liked the other ones. It just really didn't do it for me. But again, full thoughts and in-depth sort of, not anger, but like, oh, at this one in my Anne of Green Gables vlog, which should be posted soon. Oh my God. That was a lot of books. Wow. I don't typically read that many, but I think that the next couple seasons you'll definitely see really long wrap-ups. So that's probably going to be the norm. I hope you enjoy that. I will probably play around with the idea of doing a monthly wrap-up, but that is just more energy than I think I would be able to do. And I think that these videos get repetitive if you're doing it monthly. Although if you want to keep track of my more like day-to-day reading, I am trying to post more on TikTok, and it's been really fun to be over at that platform. Now, as for my like TBR, I don't do a strict TBR because I don't really stick to it, but I can tell you that books that I am really hoping to get to in the next season, I'm hoping to, and next season will encompass December, January, February. I am really hoping to finish the Anne of Green Gables series. I would love to say by the end of December, but probably not at the pace I'm going. It'll probably be in February, but I think it will be done by the end of the season in general, which is really exciting. And I'm hoping the next 4 books are better than book 4, because book 4 was a disappointment on like every level. I am currently reading the Swimming Pool Library, which I am enjoying. It is one of the more difficult books I've read this year. And I'm enjoying it in general. I'll leave it there because I have my full thoughts that I think I will put together. So I want to finish that. I also want to reread The Starless Sea. That is going to be part of, I'm doing like a winter themed books vlog, so you'll definitely see my thoughts in there. I am also planning to read The Sunbearer Trials. Those 2 for sure. As for books, oh, I also would really love to get to the Enchantment of Ravens. That's really high on my list right now, as well as Grey Warren. It's time. I've been like a little afraid to pick up the final Ronan Lynch book, but it is time. And I think right now I've been hankering for a Murakami read, but I don't actually know if that's going to happen. As for books that are coming out over the next couple months that I am really excited for. Fans on. Sorry. Let's as for books I'm really excited that are coming out over the next couple months, there aren't really any in December. I am kind of looking forward to the Poison Season, I think by Mara Rutherford, but I don't actually think I'm gonna pick it up right away. But in January, Song of Silver, Flame of Night by Amelie, I think it actually is, Wen Zhao. I'm really excited for this one. The cover is gorgeous. It is one of my highly anticipated reads of the year. I'm super duper excited for that one. And then we've also got Hellbent is coming out in January, but I don't think I'm excited for it, or not in the same way that I am for the Song of Silver, Flame of Night. That it's a mouthful, but I am excited. I'm also like tentatively excited for Roshani Chakshi's adult debut, Tale of the Flower Bride, or Last Tale of the Flower Bride. Again, another gorgeous cover. I really think this one is going to be right up my alley. It just, the aesthetics seem on point. And then also in February is day of Fallen Night, the new Samantha Shannon book, I need to read Priory of the Orange Tree. It is a priority. I would like to read it before the new one comes out, even though that's a prequel. I would like to have this one under my belt, but I am really excited for it, so that is something to look forward to. So it's sort of a weak little TBR, but like I said, lots to read. Probably gonna get a lot of books on my backlist read, which is really exciting. And I'm going to be posting a book haul probably very soon, although I don't know exactly when. And I'll talk about more in that video, the fact that I'm trying to conserve money and not spend so much money on books. So it's really going to be a focus on reading what I already have. And in general, I am always trying to save money, but specifically it's because I have something really exciting planned. And I'll talk about that more in the book haul when it eventually goes up. So thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. If you like this content and you want to see more, definitely subscribe. Like I said, any videos I talked about are linked above if I have the cards for it, or below. They're all linked below if there's something. And I do try to also link directly to the bookshop pages for the books I talk about on here, if applicable. It doesn't always happen for every single book, but I do try to get most of them down there. Thank you for watching. Have a great one. If you're somewhere cold, I hope you're staying warm. If you're somewhere warm, I hope you're staying comfortable. And most of all, I hope you're reading a great book. See you guys next time. Bye.